I remember when I first laid my eyes on the vast world of Hyrule. This was back before the game was even known as Breath of the Wild. It was simply known as Zelda U. The world had so much mystique and mystery to it, many of us couldn't help but wonder and fantasize and dream about what could be beyond those hills and mountains. It was truly a glorious time to simply speculate about what it could all be. But now, we've gotten to enjoy Breath of the Wild at great lengths, and for many, it's exceeded a lot of our very lofty expectations, and that's truly a special thing. Yet despite all that, people are now looking forward and starting to talk about the next Zelda and what's next for the franchise. There's even been some speculation about a potential direct sequel to Breath of the Wild, kind of like a Majora's Mask sort of situation. You see, for Ocarina of Time, it took Nintendo many years to create that game. And it was sort of an incredible achievement, and it was a big industry-changing event. And that game was also kind of like a reboot for the franchise. Those things could be said for Breath of the Wild as well. So maybe Nintendo thinks it would make sense to reuse the same assets and sort of change things around a little bit, create a whole new story and new dungeons around that, and bring out a new game in 2 to 3 years. I definitely love the sound of that. It's possible, but I don't know how likely it necessarily is when Nintendo is creating this story DLC that's coming out later this year. Now, what should we expect from that story DLC? It's kind of hard to say, but one thing I can say right off the bat is that as much as I loved Breath of the Wild, I do feel like the story sort of left a bit to be desired. Now, personally, I'm in love with Zelda. Of course, she's the one. But, there are all these other characters within the story for Breath of the Wild. There are these side characters, there are these champions, and I feel like there was so much time and effort put into the designs and the entrances for these different characters. I just feel like there's so much more that could have been fleshed out. I feel like I only got glimpses into their past, and there was a lot more to be told, and we just didn't get it. I feel like these characters need a lot more to be fleshed out. There's so much there that we didn't see. And that kind of, it does kind of eat at me a little bit. I feel like there's a lot more to be seen for these characters. Now, will we ever get to see these characters be fully fleshed out? Well, that remains to be seen. And unfortunately, they are dead, so that does kind of decrease the chances of that. Unless, in a sequel or potentially story DLC, they sort of venture into the past and look through even more flashbacks. That's possible. And I think it's actually a bit more likely for the story DLC to kind of bring in more flashbacks and memories to give us more reason to explore Breath of the Wild, to find more of those memories. If they give us more memories, that way we could see more through these different characters. That could be one way to flesh out these characters. Maybe they even planned that, it's possible. But for now, I feel like that's just speculation. However, I do think that there's some evidence within Breath of the Wild to at least give us a hint about what we could expect in the story DLC or a potential sequel. So, at the end of Breath of the Wild, if you have the expanded ending after collecting all the memories, we see Link and Zelda traveling together, companions, kind of like in the flashbacks, and Zelda makes a point to say that they're making efforts to restore Hyrule to its former glory, and perhaps beyond.
Restore Hyrule to its former glory. Perhaps even beyond.
So maybe that's actually there for some reason and not just fluff. Maybe there's actual purpose to it, and maybe we'll get to explore that in some way in the future. So maybe in the story DLC, Zelda is traveling alongside Link. She's some sort of companion character this time around. We'll actually get to see her, and she'll actually have screen time and gameplay. She could affect the gameplay. And then your job together is to explore Hyrule, explore the ruins and all these old towns and villages, and restore them. In fact, there is actually a town that you can build within Breath of the Wild already in the Akala region. So what if they expand upon that idea and you're supposed to kind of restore some of these villages and towns in the story DLC? That could be interesting, and that could encompass the extra challenges that we've been told we're going to get for the story DLC. But then what about this big dungeon? Is it just going to appear out of nowhere? Is it going to just be plopped onto a giant field if we buy the DLC? Maybe, but I think it's more likely that they'll have it fit in somehow within the context of the story. So if you think about it, we haven't really seen any evidence of a forest or water or fire temple. But there is some evidence for other temples, like the Forgotten Temple, and they're kind of low within the depths of Hyrule. So what if somehow, within the context of the story, a forest temple or a fire temple is unearthed, maybe because of some sort of vestige of Calamity Ganon, and we have to explore it and execute whatever is left of Calamity Ganon, or perhaps some other antagonistic force. And that's how we get to explore this giant dungeon within the DLC, and maybe somehow Zelda is stolen, or it impacts things, or she's hurt, or we need to do this to restore Hyrule to its former glory, something along those lines. That could make sense, and that could make for a very compelling story DLC. And maybe within the story DLC we'll learn more about the history of Hyrule, and get to explore more for the mysteries of Breath of the Wild. But for now, it remains to be seen. We don't know what to expect for the future of Zelda. It's kind of a mystery in The Legend of Zelda and Breath of the Wild.